little bit about Virgo Sun, Sagittarius Moon. I call this the Sun-Moon combination of the outlaw homeopath and the runaway nun, the fugitive physician, and the technicians with a mission. And then we're going to use a primary example as a children's series from the 80s called Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. It's one of my favorite shows when I was a kid. I was just totally obsessed with it. Not as obsessed as I was with Mission Impossible, but pretty darn close. So here it goes. Virgo Sun, Sag Moon. In medical astrology, Virgo rules the intestines, which separate what stays with the body for nutritive purposes from what must be discarded as waste. This is a sign most accustomed to dealing with pathogen-loaded waste, be it the type our bodies produce or the sort pumped into the environment by Fortune 500 corporations. Astrologer Stella Hyde says Virgo's obsession with being all natural, combined with their precision-calibrated intelligence, means they make for great homeopaths and nanotechnologists. People with their moons in Sagittarius, sign of the Super Crusader, need to feel as though they're on a mission of great spiritual significance to fill themselves. Both Virgo and Sagittarius are considered intellectual signs, so this is a Sun-Moon combination that's often profoundly intelligent and far ahead of its time. To illustrate, using its debut as its date of birth, the cult 1980s children's series Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future is a Virgo Sun, Sagittarius Moon. Don't let the show's title or the characters' cartoonish metal costumes fool you. This is one of the few shows that sought to smarten kids up rather than dumb them down. As one reviewer for IGN put it, Captain Power proved an immeasurably intense series. There was a shockingly mature story underneath. Dealt with the darker side of humanity, while openly dealing with death, compassion, and the redemption of mankind in a very profound way. This actually might have been one of the problems for the show. It was a kids' show, but it had storylines that were for adults. And it might be why it only lasted one season. So, set in a post-apocalyptic world ruled by a Dick Cheney look-alike known as Lord Dread, the Captain Power series follows a small team of service-minded, it's Virgo, guerrilla fighters, Sagittarius, as they fight to stop the, quote, digitalization of surviving humans into the global overmind, which is an advanced supercomputer prison that is one part Monsanto, one part Facebook. The guerrilla fighters are equipped with high-tech power suits that give them the abilities necessary to battle with Lord Dread's fleet of bio-dreads. These are nanotechnology-based super soldiers that bear more than a passing resemblance to today's Predator drones, weapons, of course, favored by Dick Cheney. Medical supplies are scarce, and the guerrilla fighters are often found delivering or rounding up medicines for people traumatized by the ravages of ecological ruin and political collapse. Sadly, significant numbers of humans have pledged their allegiance to Lord Dread, becoming traitors to both their own species and the planet itself. So the show was easily 20 years ahead of its time in depicting all of this. It was ahead of its time in other ways, too. Lord Dread's cybernetic machine empire was clearly the inspiration for the Borg, the infamous race of nanotechnology, Virgo, super fanatics, Sagittarius. They didn't make their debut on Star Trek Next Generation until 3 years later. And if you pull the show up on YouTube and pull up the guy Lord Dread, he looks exactly like the Borg. In another episode entitled Flame Street, Captain Power contracts with a team of underground computer hackers for access to the mental matrix, a direct neural link to an artificial reality known as the cyberweb. Once inside the mental matrix, Power does battle with Lord Dread, who attempts to manipulate his perception of what's real versus what's imaginary. Watching the episode on YouTube, it's hard not to notice just how much it looks, sounds, and feels like The Matrix, the blockbuster film franchise that wouldn't hit movie theaters for another 12 years. And yeah, if you pull it up on YouTube, Flame Street Captain Power, it's just watch the first 10 minutes. It's kind of hard to think that maybe the folks who did The Matrix didn't get the idea from this episode. From what's kind of a little known children's series from the 80s. Captain Power was highly original and ahead of its time, not just in terms of its on-air plot lines, but also in terms of how it was filmed and produced. show was the first television series to make regular use of CGI graphics and the first to be produced via the internet. This is back in 1987. According to a documentary on the series, the show's writers were based in Los Angeles and would, quote, modem over their scripts to the cast and crew who were filming the show in Toronto. The cast and crew would then modem back photo suggestions and revisions. This was all done via 56K connections, which are primitive by today's standards, but they are cutting-edge technology back at a time when 99% of the population hadn't even heard of the internet yet. The show is also one of the first children's shows to feature a legitimately strong female character in the form of Jennifer Chase, a pilot and tactical systems expert, portrayed by actress Jessica Steen. And that character was very much a Virgo Sagittarius archetype. It's people who are Virgo Sagittarius are often raised in restrictive, oppressive, religious, or social environments. This is because Virgo's shadow is often expressed as an obsession with sexual or moral purity, while the Sagittarian shadow is expressed as religious fanaticism and dogmatic fundamentalism. The Chase character, for instance, grew up as a member of the Dread Youth, fanatical political group for children modeled on the Hitler Youth of the 1930s, only to escape its clutches as a young adult. That of Virgo Sagittarius show, like the Captain Power series, would be so far ahead of its time in both plot lines and production methods. Makes sense if you understand the psychological operandi of this pairing. Virgo is ruled by Mercury, the planet of the lower mind, while Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, planet of the higher mind. Astrologer Sue Tompkins explains in her book Aspects, when these two minds, the lower and the higher, Mercury and Jupiter, Virgo and Sag, are working together, the result is somebody adept at thinking, writing, or communicating about the future. And here is what she has to say. Since Mercury, Virgo, and Jupiter, Sagittarius, can be associated with short and long distance travel, physically as well as mentally, this pairing can be associated with a life filled with plenty of travel. Physical travel as well as educational travel is a very good way to use these contacts. Surely such exploration is the purpose of this combination. Mercury, Virgo, Jupiter, Sagittarius. It's a good mix for the writer. It can be found, and is often found, in those whose work is read well into the future. It is also a useful combination for teachers, preachers, politicians, and philosophers. Anyone with big ideas, anyone who might talk or think about the future, and in particular about an improved future. A concern with the future can point to an interest in youth or work with youth. The combination may also be found in people who enjoy or write science fiction, a genre that usually involves itself with future worlds far from their own. So what we see here is the Captain Power series. It's not just Virgo Sag, it was Sun, Mars, Venus in Virgo, Moon, Saturn, and another planet in Sag. It's all Virgo Sag. And that checks out on all the points that Sue Tompkins makes about this combination. Show is designed for kids, and it uses science fiction to communicate very big ideas about how to improve the future. The characters we see are always flying around, so they're doing a lot of travel. And on the bigger picture, here we are, it's almost 30 years after it went off the air, the show is still talked about among science fiction aficionados, both viewers who remember being riveted by it at home and Hollywood production staff who remember being impressed by its graphics, design, and special effects. Virgo Sagittarians are often excellent teachers, and many of the crew who worked on the show would go on to teach the methods they pioneered on the series to people throughout the entertainment world. The show itself is almost like a teacher to the rest of Hollywood in a way. And like a good teacher, Captain Power may also have planted seeds within the minds of at least some of the young people who grew up watching it, and myself included. The series was very popular among children, many of whom are now in their mid to late 30s or early 40s. This is a generation now at the forefront of dealing with the consequences of a society having turned its life support systems over to an armada of giant artificially intelligent computer systems owned by defense contractors, pharmaceutical corporations, Wall Street banks, and other entities whose intentions in the real world are every bit as nefarious as Lord Dredd's were in the imaginary one we saw depicted in the series. According to astrologers Susie and Charles Harvey, two metaphoric images for the Virgo-Sagittarius pairing are a bespectacled librarian locks a door at closing time and transforms into Superwoman, and an anthropology class goes on a field trip. Both images are excellent approximations of the Captain Power series. The Jennifer Chase character, is the female lead, was cast as something of a computer technician librarian type. That is until she donned her power suit, at which point she transformed into a laser pistol-wielding homeopathic Virgo Rough Rider, Sagittarius, ready to take on all comers. So she wasn't a librarian who transformed into Superwoman, but something pretty similar. Finally, to keep costs down, the production staff took a year-long field trip from Los Angeles to Toronto. Once there, they created a complex anthropological backstory for a futuristic world filled with enormous amounts of pain and despair, but also some pangs of hope and determination. A world uncannily similar to the one we all now occupy. So yeah, Virgo, Sagittarius. So if you want, the shows are available on the internet. You can go look them up. And it was a kid's show, but totally legit for adults. I remember when I was a kid, I was like one of my only friends who was into it. So maybe it was just, I think it was just a little too far ahead of its time, a little too mature. Originally, they were going to have it on for seven seasons, so it was going to be like a huge deal, and then they only had it on for one. And there's been a lot of talk lately about there being about rebooting it, maybe making it into a movie, and there's actually been some movement on that. So it was definitely recommended. It's having its Saturn return right now, and if they bring it back and they do a good job, I'll be the first person there in the theaters to go see it. Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to take a little break, and we'll be back.